Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. And today, Dead Rising is back. The 2006 game, at this point, for me and many others, is just like a certified Capcom classic. It's fun, it's weird, and its flaws only made it more endearing. It's a unique game. One that I think has never really quite been replicated. The original was so special, man. So much so that Capcom has decided to re-release this updated version of the game in this recent wave of re-releases and remakes and remasters. The game has already technically been re-released for modern consoles in 2016, but this is Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster here. It goes a step further and rebuilds the game in a new engine with significantly updated visuals, animations, lighting, character models, and some voice acting. There are also some gameplay quality updates with controls and some tweaks to feel and flow. And it's mostly pretty good, but I am mixed on some of it. While I am definitely excited for more people to experience Dead Rising, a part of me feels like the original version still is a bit better in some ways. While this version is certainly a little easier and a little more playable, tiny changes and tweaks make it feel a bit different in ways that some purists might not be happy with. While character animations and character models look really nice and new while faithful, the overall new game visuals don't always look that great at every angle. Don't worry, I'll explain. Either way, I think Dead Rising in general rules. It's awesome. It's always a good time to play Dead Rising. Whether or not it's the original version or this new and quote-unquote improved version, that's up to you. A lot of this comes down to individual opinion. This is mine, so let's get into it. And so you know, we've been playing a review copy on PS5, and that's the footage you see running here. Also, everything here is spoiler-free. Specifically, I'm being extra careful in a weird way because Dead Rising is like a really interesting puzzle that starts pretty simple, but the more you start to solve it, the more complex and interesting it gets, and cooler stuff shows up. Does that make sense? Basically, what I'm trying to say is I want to preserve some of the fun and surprises for newcomers. So if you are new, Dead Rising is a third-person action survival game set in a mall. You're Frank West. He's a freelance photojournalist and kind of a goofball badass who heads to Colorado to investigate a town which is suddenly ridden with zombies. A helicopter drops you off at this massive mall in the heart of town, and then you have 72 hours to survive, wrangle other survivors, take photos, and get to the truth before the helicopter returns to pick you up. So, yes, there is an in-game time limit. This is like the zombie mall version of Majora's Mask, kind of. This was like an unexpected and interesting concept back when the game launched, and it still works really well today, even if it's a bit stressful. Main missions need to be started on certain days. There's a day-night cycle as you explore the mall. At night, most of the lights shut down and things get creepy as you search for survivors. There's a bit of pressure, and it often feels like there's too much to do in so little time. You know, fully explore the mall, find all the secrets, and save every survivor. It can feel tricky on your first playthrough. The game encourages multiple, don't worry. Because, you know, take too long and the in-game time will pass and side missions will be failed. Survivors waiting to be found will have died. Over the course of these 72 hours, the mall is constantly developing into something new and different. New enemies, new surprises, new bosses. It's a lot of fun, and the way the game is structured makes it way more interesting compared to your average third-person action zombie game. It was great in 2006, it was great in the remaster in 2016, and it's still great here. A lot of the fun is just in exploring the mall. It's rife with possibilities for killing zombies, from running them over with shopping carts to throwing gumballs on the floor to trip them up. There's a lot of B-movie cheese, and it's so much fun. And you can find like an antique store with a big Viking axe, or maybe just use a shovel from the hardware store. Since there are clothing stores, you can also do all this murder while being dressed like a badass or a complete weirdo. This is where the game is just so much fun. The experimentation, the curiosity, the exploration. Figure out how to kill an enemy with a kid's toy or a soccer ball. Why not? It's just good, iconic, gory, cheesy fun. And this hasn't really changed. Animations are still over the top and fun, weapons are awesome, and kills are brutal. I noticed a few sound effects here and there changed, but that's really it. Control-wise, Frank still runs around awkwardly, but it all feels a bit better. Moving while aiming a gun, the dodge roll, all that stuff feels smooth. Executing special moves feels smoother and easier too. Saving survivors, killing zombies, and taking good photos filled with stuff on screen nets you points to level up, prestige points. So as you level up, you get more health, you can carry more items, and even get some really cool special moves. You kind of go from being fairly helpless to being able to jump on zombies' heads, do a jumping kick, a flipping kick, a wall kick, dodge roll, pick up zombies and throw them, and a couple of other things over the course of the game. Although I noticed the game is a bit more generous with doling this stuff out now. And maybe it's just me, but I feel like I leveled up faster and got way quicker access to a lot of the moves. And I'm not saying that as a Dead Rising wizard either. Like, it's been a while since I've played, and I had to relearn some locations and figure that stuff out too. So I wasn't exactly speedrunning. One thing that's easier that I did find myself enjoying is the improved survivor AI. A lot of Dead Rising is glorified survivor escort, but it can be chaotic and pretty fun. It also used to just be like a total pain in the ass because survivors were really dumb and would require like constant babying and fiddling with. Now they have preferred items and are just way more competent at running around and surviving. It genuinely feels like zombies care about them less too. So while this made the most annoying part of the original game, in my opinion, a little bit easier, it almost makes it too easy. The game also has generally better features. So instead of just an arrow pointing to your objective, you have a compass with multiple objectives. Menus are easier and slicker. The map is better. You can advance time forward if you want. Save slots, or more, there's like generous stuff with that. A lot of little tweaks that don't seem like a lot add up to the game feeling just a bit easier now. Yes, the guys outside with the Jeep are still really annoying. Sometimes bosses will still get BS hits on you, and the fights are still kind of janky, yes, but the game being so much more playable now in some spots makes them all just feel 10% less threatening. Like the game loses some of that old charm. It's hard to put my finger on. It's hard to explain, and it might not matter to a lot of people, but it's on my mind, so yeah. Now, there are, of course, ways to make the game more difficult. You can use the old control scheme if you want, but yeah. The game still has its moments. You know, bringing a knife or a baseball bat to a sniper rifle fight is still a pain in the ass, so don't worry, the game isn't a complete cakewalk, but there are some bosses now that you can just easily smoke because you're not wrestling with the old controls. So it's kind of like a weird thing. While some things feel so much easier, you still get to see some of the weird, janky awkwardness of the game. It's like they didn't commit to completely overhauling it, just tweaking it enough. So again, it might feel a little unnecessary or like they didn't do enough, depending on your taste. It's like a Goldilocks thing. Are the changes just right? Too hot? Too little? Yeah, that's where I'm still just totally mixed on. And the tweaks to make the game a bit easier might not be a big deal to some. It's not even a total deal breaker for me, but like with everything else, maybe you're gonna have a different opinion. So take Frank West himself. His look is overhauled. He looks a bit different, and it seems like some fans online just like don't really like it when you look at comments. He also has a different voice actor, and while it's similar in spirit, it is jarring at first. My hot take, though, that some of you may not want to hear, is that the new Frank did grow on me. I like that he looks and feels a little bit older, a little bit sleazier, but still very familiar. It's kind of like what I pictured him as in my head. So it worked for me personally. It might not for you, depending on your experience with the game. More survivors have voice acting, including Otis, which is an absolutely awesome addition. It totally makes the game better, in my opinion. On the other hand, with Frank's new voice actor and a lot of character voices redone, it can feel a bit unnecessary. A lot of characters sound nearly the same, but diehard fans might miss some of the little nuances. At the very least, I think the new character models look great. The psychos, or the bosses, some optional, some more rewarding than others, were and still are the best parts of the game. The creative cutscenes and introductions and then boss battles in weird fun locations really just still work. and really stand out. And the fact that the Psycho bosses look better visually is nice. Little details make a hell of a difference, like some beard stubble on Adam the Clown. Stuff like that I like. I did notice that they did change the look of the Butcher. They also changed Cliff, the Vietnam veteran who goes crazy and starts killing everyone in the hardware store. They kind of erased any mention of the war stuff directly, making his dialogue make even less sense. It's just a weird, small, unnecessary choice. Little changes like this might rub some fans the wrong way. Still, the game manages to be a big, fun, goofy sandbox zombie game, and some actual additions are genuinely cool. Like I said, there's a bit more depth to the camera system, including it having an autofocus button that actually kind of feels like a light press tap on a real camera with the triggers. Weapons have damage visibility, so it's a little bit less of a crapshoot. The pause menu status looks a bit cooler now, and it's easy to change outfits and stuff. Also, they did add some really cool new kind of outfits or skins to the game. I like a lot of them. I wish they were in DLC though, depending on which version of the game you purchase, but otherwise, nice stuff. I almost think one unintended effect of the game being ever so slightly more playable and a bit more accessible meant I had more time to experiment, more time to mess around, because I wasn't struggling with a survivor trapped in a corner or with the controls as much. I was able to really just focus on the killing, the exploring, finding secrets a bit more, and man, the game was then and is now so good for that stuff, you know? Finding that hidden secret weapon, getting that weird silly hat, or figuring out how to use what you thought would be a useless weapon, getting used to the layout, and then suddenly something new is introduced, or walking unsuspectingly into the den of a freak show psycho. Man, when Dead Rising hits, it still really hits, and even my complaints kind of melt away. Even with the tweaks and stuff, I did still have fun playing this, just like I used to. It just, again, feels a tiny bit different. The visuals, though, that's a bit more complicated. I already talked about the character models looking much better, a little more expressive, but otherwise, the rest of the visuals, I'm torn. I'm mixed. I'll start with the good first. The mall has way more detail overall. Stores feel more real and filled with more things. More stuff knocked over in random halls in the mall, better signage and advertising, more detailed shelves and stuff in stores. These details help paint a picture. And here, the Willamette Parkview Mall is just a much stronger location thanks to raw detail. It was a great, iconic video game location then, and still is today. Everything is preserved, everything is just as memorable, and it's all still a blast. It's really just the graphics department that didn't really do it for me personally. I wasn't blown away. Dynamic lighting and all the fancy new technology is one thing, but it manages to still make the game look and feel kind of flat and almost compressed. In broad daylight, yes, the game does look pretty good. The outdoor areas, especially, like, they don't look good at all unless you're in that rare broad daylight. And at night, throughout the mall, and especially outside, it doesn't quite have that good moody feeling the original game had. Zombie gore is really good here, but not as much when the characters are just drably lit and almost feel like the color saturation was turned down. Also, despite the graphics being new, from the ground up, new tech here, there's a surprising amount of muddier and lower resolution textures. Also, more of a design thing, but while I'm here and nitpicking, the on-screen HUD lacks that kind of news show type feel of the original, which bums me out and feels like another unnecessary little change. Obviously, side by side, like the old game and the new game, graphically, this new version is technically way better compared to the old one, but it just lacks a little bit of the zest of the original. You might think I'm crazy, you might disagree. This is a matter of taste and preference, really. Not every remade game is going to satisfy every fan's eyeballs. It's just how it goes sometimes. So again, this is why I'm mixed, like I said at the start. For every good change, there's a little something to nitpick. And to not get too lost in the weeds, like, I do think this is partly because it's a remaster still technically. It's a rebuild of the original game, keeping the bones. It's not a complete remake. A remake, I'd be open to more changes. But here, Dead Rising changes some things that make sense and some things that don't, and still keeps some of the flaws of the old game. So at times, it feels a bit confusing. The gameplay is a bit more casual friendly and accessible, but sometimes feels a bit too easy. at least for the first half or so of the game. Some of the tweaks and additions are fun, but yet a few little things are missing and the game still manages to be cumbersome. The character models look real nice now, but the new visuals and technology don't make it look quite as good or new as I was hoping. And again, I do say this as someone who really enjoyed the original Dead Rising, but I'm not someone who memorized them all and did tons of speedruns, but I do have fond memories of it. So I think if you are a new fan, this is going to be totally fine for you, but if you are a series veteran, you might have your nitpicks. I think if you were excited to play this new version as a new fan, that's great. It's accessible, it's fun, like it should be. Either way, I think it's an interesting one. It's not totally cut and dry, but I think a lot of people are going to be happy with it. But yeah, anyway, I've talked in circles here. This is a before you buy. You know how this goes by now. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion, and now I want to hear yours down in the comments. What's your experience with the series? Are you a complete newcomer? Did you jump in later on? Maybe you got on board with Dead Rising 3 or something like that. Maybe you are a purist who is already aware of some of these changes and already unhappy. Whoever you are, let's talk about Dead Rising down in the comments. Would love to hear from you. Now, if you like this video, clicking the like button does help us out. We would appreciate that. As usual, I'm Jake Baldino. I'm here on the Before You Buys, catching me on the Friday news show. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.